Hello, my name is Ashley Vandenberk and I am a freshman at the University of Arkansas. The artwork I will be presenting is called The Depression Breadline by artist George Siegel. It is located in the Crystal Bridges Art Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas. There are many unique factors to this historical sculpture. For example, the sculpture is made up of life-size figures. These figures were individuals from George Siegel's life. For example, Martin Friedman, one of the figures cast, was the director of the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. Helen Siegel, his wife, once said that the people chosen as models for this work were the people Siegel wanted to spend eternity with. The sculptor George Siegel had a successful career and creative life. He started out in New York, where he joined a movement in developing, expanding, and participating in what became the pop, fluxus, and op movements of the late 1950s and 1960s. As time progressed, Siegel became frustrated with his inability to create space and a picture of reality using abstract techniques. This led him to experimenting with sculpture and later with the plaster bandages that created the Depression breadline. The elements of space and texture are the most prominent in the sculpture Depression breadline. Space is utilized by evenly spacing each figure out in the line. If we were to decrease the space in between, it would make the line seem more crowded, as people would feel squished together. If space was increased, it would make it seem unnatural, as people do not stand that far apart from each other in line. Texture is also prominent in this work. From the rough brick wall to the folds and smoothness in the clothing, the surface quality can be seen and felt. The wrinkles and curvature of the sculpture's face's texture makes it seem lifelike. Proportion is the main principle of art in Depression breadline. The figures are life-size in the body of work. Proportion is important as it gives a sense of size in relation to other objects. Since the people are life-size, the door is built life-size too, as it is larger than the figures. This keeps each component proportional. It creates a realistic feel as it resembles their actual appearances, rather than in an abstract way. The methodology of biography and autobiography expresses an artist's life or personality. It uses the artist as the underlying text. Siegel valued personal connections in life and found significance in everyday life. This can be seen in Depression breadline, as this historical event was an everyday task for people to get their ration of bread. He also appreciated connections in his life by having his 4 friends and including himself cast as the figures in the sculpture. Each had a unique relationship with Siegel, and they're an underlying message in Depression breadline. George Siegel is considered to be a part of the modernist pop art movement in New York. Modernism shaped this movement as it promoted innovation and experimentation and emphasis on materials, techniques, and processes. Pop art was significant because by creating sculptures and paintings from material culture, it began to blur the line between high culture and low culture artistic styles. The stylistic influence of having subject matter that is derived from everyday objects in the media put Siegel in this context of art history. He kept close to representing personal experiences and human values as well. The sculptures of Siegel are made by creating environments in which he sets the figures in. They are made from a technique called wrapping, where he uses plaster to mold their figure. His work is unique because it maintains the textural reality of the materials used in the sculptures. He puts emphasis on these textures he creates through his technique of casting life-size living figures. Depression breadline reminds me of a Hellenistic Greek sculpture. They're known to be naturalistic and expressive and to represent the character of the sculpture well. It relates much more to realism than idealism. You can see this in the figures in Depression breadline, as they have a character of hardship, exhaustion, and poverty. They're hunched over to express their exhaustion. This can be clearly seen in their droopy eyes, deep wrinkles, and their tired faces. There's nothing idealistic or beautiful about them. I chose this piece because there is historical and contextual significance. The Great Depression was full of endless hardships, and the sculpture represents just one. It brings light to a time that should never be forgotten and lets us appreciate where we are now in history. Also, with Siegel, how he uses personal connections in all of his art is really cool. It shows how he's passionate towards art and how he appreciates the relationships in life that made his career possible. I thoroughly enjoyed researching Depression breadline. We forget about how people in the past lived through hardships to get us where we are today. Siegel represented history and his own values well. Being able to show people in our lives that we appreciate them is important. This sculpture is much more than meets the eye.